Hello, my name is Bill Minax, and I've been asked to speak to you about the role of local communities in wellness. What I'm going to do in this video is to give you a definition of wellness, take a look at what's involved in mobilizing local community, trying to establish what it means for that mobilization to be competent, and finally, how you develop the empowerment of individuals and organizations in the community. So wellness. The wellness strategy developed by the government of New Brunswick has a definition which is pretty good, actually. It says, an ongoing process to enhance the many dimensions of well-being that enable people to reach and maintain their personal potential and contribute to their communities. The same strategy identifies 7 dimensions of wellness that are taken, I think, from a University of California research. The definitions are emotional, mental, in other words, intellectual, physical, social, spiritual, I could probably add cultural to that, professional, and environmental. Basically, if you take each of these dimensions, we can probably tie each one to organizations or institutions that have some kind of a responsibility for it. Human Resources and Skill Development Canada has actually illustrated the different interactions, I would say, between different sectors and how they relate to the wellness of individuals and their families. And just taking a look at it, we'll see that wellness is actually quite a complex phenomenon, and that there are quite a number of different actors involved. This would, to a certain extent, make wellness a shared responsibility, and probably nowhere else than on the local level is that shared responsibility clearly identified. So let's take a look at the local level. So when we're talking about a local community, we're talking about a territorial unit of some kind that's small enough to have a sense of belonging to it, but yet large enough to have some form of governance, some form of decision-making structures for the people who are members of the community. It's actually a tangled web of individuals, groups, organizations, and institutions that interact with each other, influence each other, and also have interactions with other individuals, groups, and organizations outside of the community. This makes it a dynamic and evolving phenomenon that has to be placed in context whenever we talk about local communities. Now, when we're talking about mobilizing or mobilization of local community, basically mobilization means that there are going to be different actors, individuals, organizations, institutions that are going to come together to create, if we will, a new entity, which we could call a collective actor, because this new entity is going to bring together these different individual actors to be able to try to change the situation, solve a problem, increase the wellness of people, and etc. it'll do this by instituting projects of some kind. And the projects are basically common projects. They're where everybody, all of the different members of the collective actor will have a common vision as to what the project should be doing and how it should be organized and trying to establish the change. Probably the most important aspect of all of this is that by instituting a common project, it's basically saying that they have a common responsibility to the change that is involved. And so we have here individuals, organizations, institutions who basically have individually a specific responsibility for different dimensions of wellness, for example. Schools for the education, child care centers to ensure that the kids are looked after and probably have some educational dimension as well, etc. And each of these actors, with their individual responsibilities, have with that an authority, if you will, that is established, that is given to them either by law or by some kind of regulation. They are therefore considered authorized, and it's legitimate for them to act within the sphere that they have responsibility for. Now, the collective actor doesn't have the same authority because there's no law or legislation that's going to give it to them. So basically, the collective actor has to develop basically a moral authority to be able to ensure that they're going to be able to have the change that they want, that's stemming from the shared responsibility, and that the moral authority is going to be perceived by the population, by the members of the community, as being legitimate, not because of legal context, but because of the competence of the mobilization itself. And so we have to take a look at what it means to be competent when we're talking about the collective actor. So what does it mean for the collective actor to be competent? Well, basically, it means that there's an ability for intersectoral action within the collective actor, and there's also the ability to successfully go through the different stages of the mobilization process or cycle. What do we mean by intersectoral action? Actually, some people use cross-sector action. I prefer intersectoral action because it means that you're really getting together to do something together. Basically, we want to pool the knowledge, skills, attitudes, intuitions of each of the individuals, organizations, and institutions around the table to be able to develop a common vision of what has to be changed and a common understanding of what has to be done to change it. The people or the organizations that are responsible in the community for producing or distributing different products and services, we can think of educational services, health services, and whatnot, are normally tied together or linked together in networks. And the networks are basically a bit hierarchical in nature. In other words, we know who's reporting to whom, what has to be done, etc. We call these normative networks so that the instrumental, if you will, dimension of a community can be fulfilled In other words, the goods and services that are required can be produced. But communities also have an existential component. In other words, there has to be somewhere something that goes further than just goods and services. We're talking about solidarity, about trust, about mutual help. And this dimension is often the role taken on by different community-based organizations, and even small businesses can fall under this heading. Basically, these types of organizations are tied together in a very informal and loose network that are usually called free networks, where all of the institutions or organizations feel that they are part of this network, but where no one is necessarily reporting to somebody else, and the decisions are made more collectively. So we can see that around the table, when a collective actor has to bring together organizations and institutions from these different networks, that it's not going to be easy, because the different networks often have different and even contradictory missions, goals, ways of analyzing problems, management styles, even ways of working together. And so the challenge is to get them to work in a concerted fashion. We can think that the word concerted comes from concert, and if you go to a concert, you can think of the conductor who has to bring the different instruments together in a harmonious piece of music. So concerted action as a voluntary process of decision-making, which is more or less formal depending on the action itself, will bring together analyses and solutions that are contributed by each of the different organizations, individuals around the table. Basically, we want to pool their resources, at least the informational ones, together to be able to have this common vision. And this means that there has to be some openness and even some room for compromise to be able to arrive at some kind of consensus. So that's basically what intersectoral action means. Now, with regards to the mobilization cycle, the different stages, once the cycle is sparked, are, to begin with, we try to look at what the situation actually is. You sort of establish a portrait of it, a profile, and then you try to analyze it. Like when you go to a hospital, people take your temperature and whatnot, and then there's a diagnosis that's done. We try to analyze to figure out what after that has to be done. Then there's a visioning process. We want to know, well, with regard to this situation, what is the objective? What does have to be changed? And basically, we have to use that as a lever to plan on short, on medium, and long-term levels how this change is going to be done, and to do it strategically, which means to be able to link the different elements from year to year together in one whole process, and also to be able to know where we're actually going to be doing. In other words, to plan operationally, to be able to implement the different actions that are within the project put forward by the collective actor, to coordinate the activities as they go on, and at the end to evaluate. And I say at the end, I should be saying at each different stage, to be able to evaluate as to whether or not this is going to be the change that we want, and what to do when we finish that. And so the collective actor becomes competent when the different members are working together harmoniously to be able to see the process through the different stages. Now, this would require that the individuals that are targeted by the project be able to access the different services that are going to be offered and whatnot, which means that we have to develop the empowerment of the different members of the community. So, the collective actor will set in motion a project to be able to meet the needs of people, to change the situation. Now, people in organizations, but certainly individuals, have to be able to access the services to be able to ensure that their needs are going to be met. Often this means that we have to develop their empowerment. And basically, empowerment, the word power is at the heart of it. It's the process which enables individuals, organizations, communities to exert power, and actually the ability to exert power. So process and ability at the same time. Now, what does it mean to exert power? Exerting power means, one, to be able to choose freely, which means that there has to be some kind of an alternative to doing what has to be done. Two, deciding according to one's choice, which means that the individuals have the ability to analyze the situation, to know what they're getting into, and to be able to evaluate the consequences before taking action. And the third stage is taking action, is basically acting upon the decision, which means that the resources that are required for action are available to people, and the people are willing and ready to accept the consequences of their action. There are three basic types of empowerment. Individual empowerment, which basically is the process where individuals acquire being able to use power. Community empowerment, which is two things actually. One, it's where communities, the process where they acquire power and use it. But communities are also the environment within which individuals develop their empowerment. And so the community has this second dimension to it, this environment of individual development, or the individual empowerment rather. And third, the organizational empowerment, which means the empowerment of organizations. But organizations also play a role with regards to their members. In other words, the organization where I'm a member of people with disabilities in Victoriaville will basically be the environment within which I will be able to develop or maintain my own personal empowerment. So organizations play a community empowerment role, and at the same time, they are part of the larger community, and therefore they go through their own individual empowerment process. There's an interaction, naturally, between the different types of empowerment. The tie between individual and community empowerment, as I mentioned earlier, the tie between organizational and community empowerment as well. And so there's this ongoing relationship between individuals, organizations, and communities, which makes this what is called a rather dynamic process. The collective actor will be setting forth projects which do not usually have the goal of developing individual empowerment. None of the projects will really follow each individual that is targeted to see whether he or she is developing the ability to exert power that he or she needs. Rather, the projects are going to be more on the level of an environment within which individuals can develop their empowerment. And so the projects put forward by the collective actor have to have the characteristics of community empowerment. And so it's perhaps important to go through or take a look at these characteristics in a little more detail. So you'll see on the screen an illustration of the different components of community empowerment. They're sort of divided into participation, abilities, communication, and community capital. Each one of these is important, and the characteristics here will basically help people to develop their own empowerment or to maintain it. For example, on the participatory level, it's normal that there has to be spaces where people can actually exert their power basically by participating in decisions. This means that there have to be processes that enable these decisions to be made, where people can actually participate in them, where they can develop their abilities to do so if they don't have them, which are led by leaders who have basically a consensual and orientation, where they're not necessarily dominant, but they want people to participate. There have to be as well occasions for people to actually contribute, because that's where they'll be able to develop their self-esteem, to ensure that they are going to have the sense of belonging. And basically there have to be resources for participation. If I don't have my wheelchair, I wouldn't be able to participate in making this video. It's not because we have resources that we are less empowered. Actually, it's the opposite. Without the wheelchair, I'm disempowered. With the wheelchair, then I can basically show and use my own personal empowerment. With regards to abilities on the community level, this means that these strengths and capacities of different individuals and organizations that make it up are going to be known by the community. The community is going to be able to get them to work together, as I explained in the previous section. That they're going to be able to work together and develop some trust and bonding between them, which is referred to often as social capital. That the people are going to be able to work together even in times of crisis or catastrophe, which is basically the basis for resilience. And so the different abilities of the community are being able to use the collective strengths of its members. On the communication level, basically this is where we want trust to be built, and so there has to be some form of transparency in the decision-making processes. People can see, understand what's taking place, and have confidence that the people who are making decisions are doing it with regards to their own personal welfare. There has to be also some form of openness, meaning that people can express their opinions and they feel confident to do so, even the opinions that might be different than those that are current. On the communication level, people have to have the information that they need to be able to make their own personal decisions And so specific information has to be available, but they also have to be able to feel a sense of what's going on elsewhere and in the community, and so general information, so that they can basically have this sense of belonging. And the sense of belonging is one of the two dimensions of the last component, community capital, and which is usually, or at least in our framework, sort of blended with a sense of citizenship. The sense of citizenship means that people are going to say, wow, these things are being done where I can participate, not just because somebody has pity on me or because somebody wants to be charitable, but because I have a right to be there. And if I do have a right, there are responsibilities as well which go with the exercise of that right. So generally speaking, the different projects put forward by the collective actor have to have these attributes, if we will, of a community empowerment to enable the individuals to go through their own empowerment process or to maintain it. So communities' role in wellness, to summarize, one is to ensure that there are mobilizations that take place that target different changes that are going to increase the wellness of the population, that these mobilizations have collective actors that are able to bring their members to work together in a concerted fashion, and that they have the abilities required to successfully go through the different stages of the cycle of mobilization. And finally, that they are able to foster and maintain the development of individual empowerment on the community level. Thank you.